First off, I personally want to welcome all of you to the meeting tonight, and we're here to talk about the South Maplewood Century Avenue redevelopment properties. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and joining us here tonight. We're looking forward to sort of updating you on our planning process and where we're at, and then going through another series of exercises where we're going to ask you to provide feedback on some potential opportunities related to these redevelopment parcel sites. We have, why don't we go to the next slide, please? There we go. This is the agenda for this evening. We're going to spend about 15 minutes welcoming you. So we're actually going to have County Board Commissioner Carter welcome you, and then talk a little bit about the community or the county and the county's values as it relates to this project. And then we're going to have Mayor Abrams also do an introduction and talk a little bit about the city's comprehensive plan and how this project ties into the comprehensive planning that was recently completed. Then we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about and summarize the community feedback that we've received to this point. This has happened in a couple of different methods. So this is an online survey. This is through the feedback that we received from probably many of you who attended the first public meeting. And then subsequently, we've also held some focus group conversations with some regional partners to talk about these properties. And so we'll give you a summary of that. We'll then move into site analysis. I think one of the things that we highlighted that we wanted to do for this group was to really analyze these sites a little bit more in depth to identify what we see as the highest and best potential for development areas on the site based on a detailed analysis. And so we'll walk you through what that looks like. And then for majority of the meeting, we're actually going to just focus in on a series of questions. So we're going to do some live interactive polling. We'll go through a series of different polls. I think there's 4 different polls. And then we'll look at the results as we transition between each of the polls. And then towards the end of the meeting, we'll, much like last time, we'll hold an open comment period. And then we will talk a little bit about next steps. And just for everybody's information, this meeting is going to be recorded. So why don't we go to the next slide, please?
Sorry, John, my computer's not behaving. There we go.
Yep. Just an overview. I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but a lot of you probably know these sites really well, and I think a lot of you may have been in attendance at the last meeting or have been part of some of the other engagement efforts. But in the context of how we talk about each site, so Site A is the northern site directly adjacent to Battle Creek Regional Park. This is the 77-acre currently undeveloped site that's just north of the Ramsey County Correctional Facility. Site B is the 88-acre Ponds at Battle Creek Golf Course site, located just south of Lower Afton Road and directly across the street from the Ramsey County Correctional Facility. So if you hear us talking about Site A and B, you have a better context of what we're referring to. All right, next slide, please. All right, I am going to turn it over to the County Board Chair, Carter, and she will introduce and welcome, and then talk a little bit about the county's values as it relates to this project.
So thank you very much. I'm Tony Carter, Ramsey County Commissioner and Chair of the County Board, and I'm really delighted to be here with you tonight. I want to mention that both Commissioner Victoria Reinhardt and Commissioner Trista Matis-Castillo are here, at least expected here on the call. I don't see all of the pictures, but I anticipate are here with us. And the 3 of us and the entire county board whom we represent are just very glad to be able to be in this conversation with the city of Maplewood, with Maplewood residents and community, and with members from our broad community as we think together, working to create joint vision according to our goals and objectives for our communities and our values for our communities of what these sites will be in Maplewood as we move forward. So we're very, very thankful you're here on the call tonight and acknowledging that even since our last community meeting with Maplewood, we have had a number of different ways in which people from Maplewood and from the broad Ramsey County community have been engaging together around this topic in multiple ways. So acknowledging that it's not just a one night thing, but that this is an ongoing conversation that we're having. Thank you so very much. Can we turn to the next slide? We decided that as we came together with you here tonight and prior to introducing the work that we will do tonight, it would be good to share with you the Ramsey County perspective based on our vision and our mission and our goals. And that vision is of a vibrant community where all are valued and thrive. We have met recently as a Ramsey County board to reaffirm that vision of a vibrant community where all are valued and thrive, and also to look at our mission and our goals and our values within the context of that vision. You must know that all of the work that we're doing, and as we come together with you here, is to uplift the achievement of that vision. And so to support it, Ramsey County does have a set of underpinning goals. And those goals are listed here on this page for you. I can talk very quickly to them, and I will. I just want you also to know that we are carrying out these goals along with a set of values that have been embedded into all of our work. And those values are to respect and uplift people, people that work with us, for us, and in our community, of course, all of the people that we serve, and to uplift integrity, making certain that the work that we do is work that you can depend and rely on, and that we are true to our word, that as we talk about our vision and our goals, we're delivering on those through all of our work. Community, respecting our community and listening to our community and wanting to ensure that all our work is guided by our community is extremely important to us and a core value. Leading in such a way as to show through our leadership the manner in which we are using resources, all our resources of time and people and land and capital, to facilitate the accomplishment of our goals and our vision. And finally, equity. Knowing that we can only be a healthy community as we uplift all in our community, ensuring that that work focuses on best outcomes, opportunities, and the ability of all to achieve prosperity within our community. So those are the values, and the goals that are listed here are actually the cars for us that help us to drive toward those values and the achievement of our vision, making certain that everyone is able to be healthy and well in our community, focusing on services and investments, programming, and in particular prevention and early intervention and the care of our environment around us. Cultivating economic prosperity, and in such a way that we uplift even those areas of concentrated poverty, which actually do exist within our community. And knowing that in order to do that, we have to engage all of our communities. We have to be able to, in fact, create through our leadership inclusive initiatives that will not only engage but prosper all our communities. Looking at the opportunity for mobility and access across all our residents and businesses, connections to education, to employment, to the economic development of our entire region on behalf of all of us. And finally, because we do have resources that come from taxpayers, and we are responsible to expend those in ways that benefit our taxpayers and community. We want to be the model of fiscal accountability, transparency, and through those strategic investments that we are making, ensure that for you. Next slide, please. On this next slide, we're sharing with you that Ramsey County's been investing in these community conversations and engagements such as this in all of our work and building toward economic prosperity and building toward economic inclusiveness and building toward economic competitiveness in our region. And in doing so, we are focusing on a couple of strategic planks that are within our strategic plan and initiatives. And those are to cultivate economic prosperity, invest in neighborhoods with concentrated financial poverty, such as was on the other slide, and to enhance access and opportunity and mobility for all residents and businesses through strategies that are listed here. And those strategies important to this particular set of work that we're talking about have to do with ensuring that we have adequate, ample, and quality housing, affordable home ownership also. You know, from the work that we've seen throughout COVID-19, we know how important home is and that that's the foundation upon which all else is built. We want to be certain that as we look at any projects within our county, we're focusing on taking advantage of our transit corridors and ensuring development within those corridors, and also working with our community on strategies for equitable development across the county. Those strategies that would engage working with all of our communities and ensuring contracting and procurement in ways that uplift our values. And in the economic competitiveness, innovation and transformation area, accelerating our workforce recovery programs, ensuring that pathways help people to gain opportunities for entrepreneurship, and specifically BIPOC communities that have not always had those opportunities, strengthening our alliances to ensure business retention, and that we are building and expanding our infrastructure in supporting all communities in that regard. And then, of course, making certain we're attracting those high wage businesses and also encouraging high wage jobs in those industries that are going to be there for the future. And of course, our success means that we will be able to be a healthy county with healthy people, inclusively building wealth together, and ensuring that we are also a resilient community that's able to buy through some of the difficulties that we've seen in this current time and recover not only where we've been, but actually build back better. The next slide talks about our 21st Century Parks Initiative, of course, also applicable to this project. Since 2019, the Ramsey County Board has been working through a vision of how we reaffirm that our parks are accessible and available for all, that we have a recreation system for the 21st century that touches and provides opportunity for all to be healthy and well. And this is, of course, with a residents first approach, utilizing services and facilities strategies that ensure our residents are in a convenient way able to access our services and facilities, and making certain, again, that we're listening authentically to the engaged community in a dialogue that represents the whole community, that we are able to be nimble, and that we are focused also on our goal of achieving health and equity for all. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share so that we found this discussion and those values according to our vision, goals that help us to work continually toward that vision, the applicability of our strategic plans, our economic inclusiveness and competitiveness plan to the work that we are doing here with you as we look to join our visions together to create a sightline to what these properties can be as we look, all of us, to uplift our vision for community. Thank you so much. I look forward to learning so much more on the call today along with you and in getting to the place where we want to be achieving a joint vision together.
Thank you, Chair Carter. Now we go to the next slide, and now we'll hear from Mayor Abrams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for participating in this Zoom public engagement event. The Ponds Golf Course and what we're calling Site A are very important assets in the city of Maplewood. We value both of these parcels of land because they really contribute to the quality of life here in our city. I want to thank everyone who took time today to participate and to share their opinions, because this really is important. I also want to thank the people that have sent me a number of emails and contacted me about their concerns about the future of mostly the ponds, but also parcel, or what we're identifying as Site A. I want you all to know that I share your concerns because, as I said, these parcels are very important parcels to the quality of life in Maplewood, and that's what my concern is. I do want to clear up some misinformation that has become apparent in the communications that I have received from residents. While the Ponds is physically located in Maplewood, the city does not own the ponds. Ramsey County owns the ponds and the additional open lot that are both subject of this meeting. The pond staff, those people that work at the golf course, are Ramsey County employees. And I also want to make it clear that it was solely the decision of Ramsey County to express their interest in selling the property. Now, with that, it should be also clear that Maplewood's role is as the zoning authority. And as the zoning authority for this property, I can tell you that Maplewood has a very robust history of public engagement, of listening to our residents, listening to our businesses, and making decisions that really are the best for the city of Maplewood. As the zoning authority, I thought it would be very helpful to include in this introduction Jeff Thompson, our Community Development Director, so that he can explain Maplewood's role and our process regarding land that is located in Maplewood. Can we get Jeff on here?
Thank you, Mayor Abrams. So thank you, Mayor Abrams, and thank you, Commissioner Carter. Appreciate your welcome here this evening. As Mayor Abrams mentioned, she did ask just we provide some maybe the policy guidance from the city's end. So the city has a robust, our policy planning document is our 2040 comprehensive plan. This was a plan that was actually adopted by the final adoption was just last year in 2020 and really guides all of development in the city of Maplewood for the next 20 years. So a very pertinent document to the discussions here this evening about the future of the properties that are owned by Ramsey County. I won't go through the plan in detail, but just note that there are a number of guiding principles which outline kind of our community values in Maplewood, which talk about equity, resilience, being multi-generational, and as well as providing healthy communities. To get down into the specifics of this site, I know we've also at our staff level received a number of questions from the neighbors and from the community members that have engaged in this process about these specific sites and how they're addressed in our 2040 comprehensive plan. Maybe this information may be a repeat from last meeting, but our long-term development framework guides the ponds property for park uses. So that would be active or passive recreational uses, and guides the correctional facility site, the entire correctional facility site, including the vacant part being discussed here as Site A, as institutional. So that would be schools, religious institutions, government centers, and other types of public uses, certainly consistent with the uses out there today. So just wanted to lay that groundwork that the plan can be amended. It's not unique for the plan to be amended throughout the 20-year period. It's intended to be somewhat of a guiding document that can change. And as the mayor mentioned, as part of any sort of amendment, that's we're committed to community engagement, which is why we have engaged in this process, as we think it's very important that the community be able to weigh in on any of the development changes that may be contemplated in Maplewood. So this process here tonight is a precursor. We do not have any, typically an amendment requested by a property owner. We're not in that process. We do not have that development application, but should any sort of land use approvals be requested in the future, know that there would be also additional community engagement at that time. Neighborhood meetings, notifications, as well as public hearings before our council reviews that. So our council has been committed to community engagement as part of our 20-year comp plan, and we are committed to community engagement as we continue, as we see development happen in that plan. So with that, Mayor, I don't know if you have additional comments. I can turn it back to John.
Thank you, Jeff, for outlining that. I just want to recommit my dedication to participating in this process, but ultimately making a decision about what is going to happen with this property as to what is really in the best interests of the residents of Maplewood. As the mayor of Maplewood, that is my commitment to the residents. That is my commitment to our businesses, because we live here. We know how important this property is to our community. And I'm interested in getting on with our meeting tonight. And I'd like to hear what everyone has to say, because listening is going to be a really important thing for me. And I know ultimately for our city council members as well. So thank you, everyone. And once again, welcome and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? Great, thank you. So for those who were able to attend our first public engagement online forum, we spent a lot of time, I think, answering some of the questions that County Commissioner Carter and Mayor Abrams have alluded to. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was really try to respond to a lot of the questions about the golf course. And so specifically, you know, there was questions about how the decision was made, when the decision was made, and just in general other questions around that topic. And so what we did was we took a majority, if not all of those questions, and we prepared an FAQ, so frequently asked questions. And so you can go to the website. Here's a link on the page that you're looking at that links you to that FAQ. So specifically, we wanted to respond to that because we also wanted to, as part of this planning process and as part of this meeting, you know, really our charge is to focus on the potential long-term thinking about these two parcels that we identify as site A and B. And so the purpose of this meeting tonight and overall this planning process is to really continue to engage with the community and all the stakeholders that are affected by this project, to develop a common vision, as Chair Carter mentioned, for really the highest and best use of these two sites. And so ultimately, you know, this planning process and this conversation tonight is not intended to revisit, nor is it intended to change any decision that's been made about the golf course site. So if you have any specific questions about the golf course site, obviously you can go to the website here, but then also you could contact Martha Faust at Ramsey County, and she should be able to answer your questions or direct you to the appropriate people to be able to answer the questions. Now, in saying that, this planning process does not preclude us from identifying golf or other recreational activities as a future possible use on this site. The only thing this process won't do is change the decision that's already been made. So as you all of you are providing input, you know, we've heard a lot about golf, and we'll sort of show what some of that feedback is, but it's not going to preclude us from including concepts that do include golf as an option on this site. So just so you're all aware. All right, next slide, please. I'm not going to have anybody introduce themselves, but this is really sort of the key people who are working on this project. So I, John Slack, and leading the project. And I think a lot of you have directly emailed me, so thank you for your comments and your feedback. And then Jay Dem and Vanessa Eichhoff are people that I work with, and they're partners on the project with us. And then from the leadership team side, you have the county representative, Martha Faust, who's on the call tonight, and then Mike Martin, who is the project manager from the city standpoint. So I think for those who have provided feedback and comments, again, thank you. And I think that if you have probably connected with one of the three of us or some of the elected officials. Next slide. So quickly, you know, I don't know, we're in month 12 of COVID, something like that. I think as a sidebar, my daughter has been home from school for almost a year. So she's going to be going back to school in late March here, which will be pretty close to, or late February, which is almost close to a year. But so a lot of you have been engaged in virtual meetings and you have completely shifted your lives for work on virtual meetings. But, you know, we always just want to make sure that we put the rules out there just so we're cognizant and conscious of the others who are in the meeting with us. So again, you know, let's just be respectful. Let's be patient. The two red things that highlighted sentences that I want to really focus on is that as part of the presentation tonight, we're actually going to have the chat off, and then we're going to turn the chat on during the Q&A. And so that's when we'll have an opportunity a little bit later in the meeting for you to document or provide any thoughts or questions in written form. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end of the meeting for open Q&A, public comment period at the end of the meeting. Next slide. Sorry, things are a little bit slow here. So this should look familiar to all of those who have been part of sort of the ongoing engagement, including the first public meeting. What we've basically done is that we've added an additional meeting, public meeting, which is the meeting tonight. And based on the first meeting that we had, we just felt like we needed to have another opportunity to sort of put some value-based questions out there and elicit some responses from the community stakeholder groups. And so that's being highlighted there as stakeholder meeting number 2. After this meeting, the intent is that we'll start to move into really concept development. And the idea is that we'll be continuing meeting with focus group, stakeholder groups outside of this group, and then meeting with city and county, different working groups as we move through. And the hope is that we'll have another meeting identified there as community stakeholder meeting number 3. And that's likely going to happen in a little bit different time frame than you're seeing on this calendar. It's probably going to happen within a month and a half. So please keep an eye out for most likely around early March for us to come back with another meeting. And then the intent is that we'll add an extra meeting at the very end of the process. So we are adding one community focus meeting, which is tonight, to really hear additional thoughts and comments that you have about the project. Next slide. So now we're going to transition over, and I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa to talk really high level, just some of the feedback that we've received so far.
Good evening, everybody. As you probably know, we've had community meeting number 1 where we introduced the project. And in that meeting, we had feedback through an interface tool on Miro. So we collected that data. We also heard from over 490 people on the online survey that was completed. And then we've had email responses to our team and to the county and the city. And then we've had stakeholder meetings with a group of people to offer a more regional perspective on what we're looking at. So based on those two, we really are focusing on kind of the individual feedback that we received in the meetings and the surveys, and then the regional feedback through those stakeholders. So there were a series of survey questions that were answered. So what we want to talk about here, and just to show you, is that kind of the range of answers that we got in that survey feedback. So this question, you know, what are the best assets and or opportunities of the sites? And these questions were asked about both sites, not one in particular or separately. So, you know, there were a lot of appreciation for the natural aspects of the wetlands, the prairie, a lot of support for golf and the driving range, a lot of enthusiasm for Battle Creek Park and connections through bicycle and walking trails, and then some of the other assets just about the proximity and the land size. And then of the answer of the next question, what are the main challenges or issues with the site? You can kind of see also the range, which is, you know, some of the congestion, maybe the noise from the range. There was a lot of concern about saving the open space habitat, some of the grasslands and some of the existing ecosystems that were there. Some of the challenges highlighted were the terrain and the wetlands, and then really just trying to work with the neighbors and trying to work on a site that would work, sorry about that, try to talk about the impact of a new development on the existing character of the neighborhood. And then what are the future land uses and amenities and how could they be beneficial for the community? So as you can see the range here, again, a lot of open space with trails, golf, meaningful commercial development, mix of housing and community farming and agriculture came up a lot as well as things like mixed businesses and some indoor gathering space for the community that was missing at that end of Maplewood. And then what could change and what could change, what could remain? You can see that list there: green space, golf course, winter activities such as cross-country skiing, playgrounds, and then also the addition of some other services to that end, including housing and potentially some clubhouse and food service. And finally, what would your ultimate vision be? There was a lot of support for youth programming, both through the golf course and other recreation, mixed housing, community agriculture, greenhouse, nursery, protection of the existing infrastructure of Battle Creek and the ecosystems, and then senior housing and different kind of housings. So that was the individual perspective. And then we wanted to have a regional perspective from different stakeholders based on these are Ramsey County properties, and the impact is much larger than just the neighborhoods or just the city of Maplewood. So who we met with were a lot of different commissioners from the city of Maplewood, St. Paul Chamber of Commerce, some different individuals from public health that have to do with food accessibility, the Twin Cities Community Land Trust, and then Institute of the Environment. So a range of people we engaged, and we're looking forward to continue conversations with them to get feedback on potential plans in the same way that we are going to be engaging the public. And then some big themes that we heard from our regional stakeholders were the need for a neighborhood identity in this area, the need for housing typologies, food access, community supported agriculture, a lot of talk about mobility and public transit, and then equitable development. And then based on the individual feedback and the stakeholder feedback, we took all of the comments and really looked at how they fit into these larger themes. So these are the themes that we heard. So appreciation for and protection of the natural spaces, support of golf, support for public recreation in many forms, community supported land uses such as housing, gathering space, and then food resources, community gardens, accessibility and expanded food access to markets. All right, John, I'm going to turn it over to you for this one.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. So we're just going to go through some high-level summary, and then we'll get into some detailed summary of the specific sites. But this should look familiar. This was a slide that we presented at the last public meeting, but it really just starts to talk about the regional context. So Site A and Site B have been identified, in the context of its proximity to a regional highway network, and its close proximity to really some wonderful recreational amenities, including Battle Creek Regional Park. And then its context to some really compatible land uses. So surrounded by a lot of residential, and then in close proximity to some major commercial areas. Next slide. So then this graphic starts to zoom in a little bit more closely. You can see sort of the 2-mile radius, which will inform the next series of slides. But just looking at other sort of resources in close proximity, you know, so closeness to schools, existing schools, regional park, as well as you know, medical services and commercial areas. And then we'll go to the next slide. Some of the questions that we received as part of some of this ongoing engagement, including the first public meeting, were around the employment numbers that we had thrown out previously. So we had previously identified a little bit over 25,000 jobs within this 2-mile radius. And so the 2-mile radius just really serves as sort of our catchment area. But what this graphic does is really starts to break that down a little bit more detail. So you're seeing 3M, which is, you know, basically north of our parcel, and just within the 2-mile radius is, you know, a big generator of jobs. And so there's approximately 12,000 plus jobs of the 25,000 jobs within the 2-mile radius that exist just from 3M. And then Woodwinds Medical Center, you know, directly to the east of Site B, is another major employment generator, a little bit over 2,000. But so this gives you a better sense that, you know, most of the jobs tend to be sort of at the edges of sort of our catchment area, and then also located primarily along major roadways and corridors. Next slide. We also wanted to just look at a sort of a racial ethnic diversity breakdown within the 2 miles. And so, you know, the chart on the left really identifies what the breakdown is, or percentage of breakdown from those different racial ethnic groups. And so the white being the largest, so those who identify as white, so a little bit over 65%, and I guess that's not a number that is too surprising. Black, African American, BIPOC, about 17.6%, and then you can start to see how those numbers start to decrease. Asian, 9.2% is the next largest population. And we are also looking at mapping sort of where some of these populations might fit within this 2 mile. And so we'll continue to provide some of that information as we move forward. And then the next slide, we received some questions about, you know, marketability of these potential sites. So how would these sites do within, you know, sort of the market? And so what this series of bulleted lists just identifies is some of the positives as it relates to market. We know market cycles are ever changing, they're up and down. And so marketability is a little bit harder to capture, but we see these as some of the key attributes that could, you know, inform or influence the market. And again, some of these things we've already talked about. So regional or proximity to regional amenities like the regional park, adjacency to other amenities like Carver Elementary School, access to the highway network and major roadways is obviously very important. Proximity to major employment areas, which we just highlighted with 3M and Woodwinds. These sites are really large, so it's not always the easiest thing to find large significant sites that can support you know, a wide mix of different types of land uses, as well as open space and natural elements. And they're also in close proximity to major downtowns, including St. Paul. And they sit within you know, some major established residential areas. So I'm going to hand it back over to Vanessa. I think one of the things that we have been asked a lot about is really developability of these sites. And so we developed a series of lenses to kind of look at each individual site, A and B, to identify, you know, where potential development could or maybe should happen if that were the case in the future.
Yeah, so this first series of slides are really just talking about sorry about that. Or sorry, John, you can still see my screen, correct?
I can see everybody's faces.
That's so weird. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Do you want me to try to share?
Yeah, could you I'm sorry, thank you.
All right, so you're able, let me, I'll expand this open here, and then I'll put it in the right view mode.
Great. Okay, so as John's getting this up, basically what we were looking at was a series of things that, you know, based on what we heard feedback on, interested in like preserving the wetlands, and then also the types of grasslands and the slopes and all of those things. We wanted to look at a little bit greater detail at the sites themselves. So the map that's on the side of the left-hand screen just kind of shows you in relationship to each other, and then we're going to look at the enlargements on the right-hand side. So site A is, it does have several different wetland specific or classifications on them, and they're indicated with the ABC type of marker. And each one of those classifications then require a buffer margin to protect or to have a planted area around those wetlands. And as you can see from our A to B to C range within this site, is that there is a lot of overlap between those, and that they are also, the A is kind of the highest quality, down to the C to the stormwater pond is kind of the lesser quality of these wetlands. Next slide. All right, so site B, same thing. What you'll start to see on site B is actually stormwater ponds on kind of the northern portion of the site. Those are the SP classifications. And then the kind of the higher quality of the wetlands as we get farther down to the south end of the site. So you'll see A and Bs, and then those have the 100 kind of foot 100-foot buffer along them. And the concentration of those are really on the south of the site. Okay, next slide. And then from there, we started to look at the soil types. Soil types can be looked at from, there's the same soil type, and they're different. There's a range of soil types on these sites, and we can start to look at how suitable they are for different types of development based on what you want to do. So this is a mapping of the suitability of soils based on a dwelling with a basement. So a home or a multi-story or house or structure. So the red zones are saying that they're very limited. Most of those are concentrated on the slopes. And then the yellow is somewhat limited, also on the slopes mostly. And then the greens are what are more of a developable site for that particular type of or development on this particular parcel. Let's go look at site B. And these, yeah, thank you. And then, so this is the golf course, and this is going to be the same thing, you know, limited. And then most of that is going to be around the wetlands and where there are more slopes, and then with more green or much more open or developable, or the much more supportive soil types for that type of development based on the north side. All right, and anywhere you see gray, those are things that have not been mapped, because mostly they're where structures are or parking lots at this point. Next slide, please. And then from there, we started to look at how intense some of the slopes were on these sites. The red is mapping basically anything 35% or over on the slope, the yellow 20 to 35. So we would really be concentrating on how the green zones, and those being the areas that are going to be most developable or most easy to build on these sites. So that's the site A, which I think we know, because we know it drains to kind of the northwest. And then here's site B. Same thing. A lot of the steeper slopes on here, I think, are having to do with the landforms around the golf course, but you can see it's much more concentrated with the steeper slopes on the south portion of the site. Okay, next slide. So taking all of that information, what we have looked at is the intensity of the slopes based on the soil types, and then overlaid that with the wetlands and the wetland buffer to say that those are areas that are potentially restricted. And then what starts to come out in these diagrams are really just showing the white areas are the potential areas for development on these parcels. There could be areas where you put roads in or some other type of infrastructure in the areas where it is steeper, but for larger site development, it would be within those white zones. Let's look at the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. And on that one, there was approximately about 44 acres left of the total in the white area. And then parcel B, you'll see the same kind of resolution. And there's about approximately 40 acres in just the white areas that are not, that are outside the wetland buffers and outside of the slope restrictions. I think that's the last one, John.
Great, thank you. We'll be putting this presentation up on the website. So hopefully it's up by tomorrow. So if you have any specific questions or any thoughts, you can go and look at it on the website. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition to what we're called polling. So how this will work is that there's going to be 4 different sets of polls. The first poll will really focus on more broad sort of objectives and goals. Again, a lot of this is what we're looking towards is sort of common values. And so these will be much higher, much more broad level questions. Poll 2 will really kind of focus in on open space. And so we'll sort of zoom in and talk specifically about each of the sites. And then the questions will be focused on different aspects of open space, and we'll be looking for you to provide feedback on that. Poll 3 focuses on land use. And so the questions will be focused on, what types of land uses would you like to see on the site? And then I'll note that for poll 3 and poll 4, which I'll explain in a second, there is going to be the opportunity to provide 3 of your top choices and sort of 3 of your least favorite choices. So when we get to 3 and 4, we'll remind you, but it would be beneficial if you're able to sort of input the 3 top land uses that you'd like to see, and then the 3 least important land uses that you'd like to see. And then poll 4 will be really specific to housing. So it'll talk about the different housing types. And again, it'll offer you the opportunity to identify your top 3 and your bottom 3. As we go through each poll, the polls will just show up on your screen, and then you'll vote. And then I think once we get close to sort of the maximum number of votes, which is the 97 or 98 total people that are in the group, I can't see the total right now, we'll actually summarize the poll. So we're able to, as part of live polling, show you sort of where all the votes are sort of coming in as a range. And so we'll do that after each of the polls. And then after we're done with the polls, then we'll open up the chat, and then we'll have an opportunity for some public comment. So we can get started with the polls now. I'm not going to read the polls. I think all of you should be able to read specifically the questions and provide your feedback. And I'm assuming everybody's going to take these a little bit different at different speeds. So why don't we get started, and we'll just track to see how many people have filled out the poll, and then we will end when we get close to the number of attendees. So please feel free to start now.
Hey, John, looks like we're at about 85% voted, so maybe a few more minutes.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. Looks like it's slowing down a little bit now, isn't it?
Yeah. I wonder if that is going to be it, because I'm sure we have people that are on the computer and their phone, so we may not have 100% voting, just based on how people are interfacing with the community meeting.
Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly just walk through just to summarize this, and obviously we'll capture this as part of our due diligence for engagement. So first question was really zip code, and it looks like almost 60% of our attendees tonight are from the 55119 zip code. Second question was really focused on job prioritization. So number 2 and number 3 are job prioritization questions. Number 2 is focused on site A, and it looks like about 37% of the respondents thought job creation on the site would be a good thing, and about 63% thought that it would not be a good thing. Question number 3 focuses on site B, which is the pond site. So 17% thought that job creation on the pond site would be positive, and then 83% thought that job creation on the pond site would not be positive. Question 4 focuses on should site development on site A increase the city tax base for the city and the county? Almost 50-50, so 47% said yes and 53% said no. For question number 5, which is the pond site, same question around development focusing on improving and increasing the tax base. 25% said yes, that was important, and then 75% said no. Question number 6, should development of site A include open space accessible to the public? 87% of our respondents said yes, and 13% said no. And then the last question in this poll is open space accessible to the public on site B, which is the pond site. 96% said yes, and 4% said no. So great. I will also note, and I think I mentioned this once, we are hoping to have a new survey online at the project website up and available tomorrow. We're going to be asking these same questions, and we'll be advertising the opportunity for people to take the survey a little bit more broadly. So feel free to go to the survey online tomorrow and fill this out again if you'd like. All right, so can we go to the second poll?
I'll just add to that too, that survey will be open till February 12th for everyone.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so poll number 2, this really focuses on land uses in open space. And so again, should be pretty straightforward, and there are 5 questions that we'd like you to respond to. And Vanessa, is this multiple choice?
Yeah, yes, I think that these are where we start asking the top 3. So top 3 most acceptable.
Okay. So please feel free to start the survey.
Just to give everybody an update, we're about 80% responded on this. We'll give it a few more minutes. I think our numbers have stopped. John, do you want to, maybe we should end it and share the results?
Sounds good. All right, so hopefully everybody can see on the screen. First question was choose the top 3 general types of land uses you find most acceptable for Site A. And out of the 87 total votes, people who voted, 77% of those who voted say open space passive is their top priority. The next 2 highest would be open space programmed and then agriculture. If we go to question number 2, same general question, choose the top 3 general types of land uses you find most acceptable for Site B. Out of the 87 people that voted, we have 86% voted for open space programmed. And then right behind, closely behind, 85% voted for open space passive. And then agriculture was at 48%. Question number 3, choose the top 3 open space typologies you find most acceptable for Site A. Out of the 87 votes, it looks like natural habitat garnered the most poll votes at 68%. Walking trails, bicycle paths was 60%. And then we have wildlife viewing and community gardens, edible plants, sort of close third. Active recreation, passive recreation are also a little bit higher on the spectrum of the votes. Question number 4, choose the top 3 open space typologies you find most acceptable for Site B, which is the Ponds Golf Course site. Natural habitat garnered the most votes at 52% of the total 87 people that voted. Walking trails was a close second at 49%. And then there's 3 that are pretty similar: wildlife viewing, passive recreation, and then active recreation were all in and around the 30% range. Oh, golf course, I'm sorry, I missed that. Golf course was at 64%, so that was the one that did garnish the most votes. Sorry about that. I can't see this full next one.
I can read it if you want.
Okay, yeah,
It says,
please.
Choose the types of sustainability focused infrastructure you find preferable for both sites. It looks like solar power was the winner on that guy, closely followed by green corridor connections and stormwater detention retention.
Great. All right, why don't we go to the next poll? So poll 3 really focuses on commercial and or institutional uses. So again, this is the opportunity for you to provide 3 options. So for most acceptable, please just identify your 3 top choices. And why don't we start polling?
I just want to add to on this one, we have the top 3 for most acceptable, and then top 3 for the ones you find least acceptable. So make sure you're paying attention to the wording on the questions.
Thank you.
These are a lot of questions, so it's taken everybody a little bit longer. It looks like we're at about 63% through here, so we'll give it some more time. So we're about 80% complete. We'll give it another minute here and let people finish.
Yeah, I think we can wrap up. I haven't seen anybody vote in like a couple minutes here. So, all right, we'll close this poll and then we'll summarize here. So question number 1, choose the top 3 types of commercial development you find most acceptable for Site A. And out of the 81 people who voted, 72% of you said agriculture. I think the next one that got the most votes would be restaurant, bar, coffee shop. And then third looks like neighborhood retail. And then there's a couple others that are much lower in the 20% range, daycare and health club fitness. Question number 2, choose the top 3 types of commercial development you find the least acceptable for Site A. And out of the 81 votes, 86% of those who voted for large format big box retail as the least acceptable option for development. Closely following behind that is industrial at 84%. And then the third one that garnered the most votes at 56% was hotel. As we move to question 3, choose the top 3 types of commercial development you find most acceptable for Site B. Out of the 81 people who voted, 77% of you said agriculture was the most acceptable. Second was restaurant, bar, coffee shop at about 44%. And then third was health club, fitness center at 32%. And the neighborhood retail was at 27%. So just a little bit behind that third one. Question number 4, choose the top 3 types of commercial development you find least acceptable for Site B. Out of the 81 votes, 88% of you said large format big box retailer, similar to the previous question that identified least acceptable for Site A. The second one at 84% was industrial, and then the third at 57% was hotel. Question 5, choose the top 3 types of public institutional development you find most acceptable for Site A. Out of the 81 people voted, 83% of you said the library, 77% said community center, and then 40% said identified place of assembly. Question 6, choose the top 3 types of public institutional development you find most acceptable for Site B. Out of the 81 people who voted, 74% of you said library, 73% of you said community center, and then there's a whole bunch in close proximity between 32 and 40%, and those were place of assembly, museum, and school. All right, can we go to the last poll? So the last poll is specifically focused on the land use of housing. And again, we want you to identify your 3 top choices. So for the first question, most acceptable, 3 top choices. For the second question, least acceptable, 3 bottom choices. And there are 4 total questions as part of this poll. So we can get started with the poll.
Just to give everybody an update, we're about 70% responded at this point.
Why don't we just go another 30 seconds here to see if anybody else wants to get one more vote in at the end. All right, why don't we end the voting? I haven't seen any new votes in the last 30 seconds. All right, thank you. So first question, choose the top 3 types of housing development you find most acceptable on site A. Out of the 78 votes we had, 56% said single family detached. At 40%, independent living senior housing. And then the third most vote getters is sort of close proximity between 26 and 28% respondents. So affordable workforce apartments, assisted living, memory care, senior housing, and affordable apartments. Question number 2, choose the top 3 housing types, developments you find least acceptable on site A. So out of the 78 votes, 49% of those voting said affordable apartments. The second was, looks like 45% of the votes, affordable workforce apartments. And then the third was sort of close to tie between market rate apartments and luxury upscale apartments. Question number 3, choose the top 3 types of housing development you find most acceptable on site B. Out of the 78 votes, 56% said most acceptable would be single family detached. The second most voted was 41% for independent senior housing. And then the third at 35% was assisted living, memory care, senior housing. Question number 4, choose the top 3 types of housing development you find least acceptable on site B. Out of the 78 votes, it looks like the one that got the most votes at 54% was affordable apartments. In a close second at 53% was affordable workforce apartments, and then market rate apartments. And then the one that came in sort of fourth with the most votes was 44% for luxury upscale apartments. Great. All right. Can we go back to the presentation? All right. I assume everybody can see my screen again?
Yep.
All right. So I think this is the point of the meeting that we had identified for public comment. So we will turn on the chat function. And I think now you'll be able to unmute yourself. And what we'd like to do is if you'd like to speak, please just raise your hand and we'll try best to track the order of those people who have raised their hands. And then depending on the number of people we have who would like to say something, we'll just figure out how much time we can set aside for each person to speak. So I see one hand raised. Maybe I'm not seeing the full thing.
I can't start my video. You can't see me because I pressed the icon to start the video, but it says that the host has stopped the video. So maybe, I don't know how many hands you're seeing.
I'm seeing 2 right now.
Correct, John. Those are the 2 hands
okay.
that are raised at this time. You'll
okay,
see them
so well, why don't we start with John Zekagel? Sorry, John. Can't pronounce your last name. But
hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Apparently I am not able to do my video. But so I will just speak. I'll try to be short. I'm here representing the Friends of Maplewood Nature, which is a nonprofit all-volunteer group dedicated to preserving nature and promoting environmental education in Maplewood. There's been a lot of press and discussion about the golf course, but not a whole lot about Site A, the 77 acres. I hike in Battle Creek Park every week. I want to mention that I see, especially in the summer, about half of the people on the trails there are Southeast Asian. Also see Somali Americans, quite a diverse population that use those trails. And some of the trails run within a few feet of Site A. I've been documenting all of the wildlife there, particularly the birds in Site A. There are a number of birds like bobolinks there that I do not see anywhere else in southern Ramsey County. This is a really unique habitat. We need to do what we can to preserve this. From the standpoint of those of us who walk those trails, the park and Site A are one natural area, and we need to recognize that by making it an official part of the park. So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate, and I'll be glad to, I'll look forward to continued participation in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, John. All right, I think Carla was second. So Carla, you.
Am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted. We can hear you, Carla.
Okay, this is Carla Sand, and of course I live in South Maplewood, but I happen to live right on McKnight Road. And question in my statement is for Tony Carter. I'm not sure if she's still on the call or not, but I'm wondering if when they give their input into the decision on more B is what I'm concerned about. That's closer to me. That the housing that's already in this area has a lot of market rate housing. Within one block of where I live, there are probably 5 or 6 market rate housing. Just because they're in St. Paul does not change the population. And I just want to make sure that Tony Carter is aware of that if they make those types of decisions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carla. Let's see, next was Bob Bierscheid.
Hi, thank you. I want to make 3 quick points. Number 1, 20 years ago, the residents of Ramsey County overwhelmingly passed a charter amendment that said land that was set aside as any kind of parkland there should be no net loss. In other words, that land, if it is changed, would have to be replaced. And I think this area, both areas would fit into that. Number 2, we've just passed a new federal executive branch, and the president has said that our environment, that we've got to take care of it. And we should have realized this long ago. In any change to, and a part of that is green space, outdoor space, natural space. And number 3, if we've learned anything from this pandemic, it's that people need to be outside and be active in order to maintain both their physical, mental, and social health. And one of those areas is golf. They found out from actually checking. And so that's why I think that it should not be changed. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Let's see, Christina, Phil, looks like you have your hand raised.
Hi, John, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Christina.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity here to participate in this process. I've lived in this area for nearly 20 years, and I do live very close to Carla Sand, who previously spoke. I live in a townhouse complex here with 190 units, and I have to say I've really enjoyed the golf course since the course has been built, and I absolutely love our trails. They're a little icy right now, but I just want to put out there, you know, I noticed comments about Site A for trails, and if we do increase the trails, it'd be nice to make sure that they're maintained so they're not too slippery. And also, you know, there are challenges with the crosswalks there with trying to even get to the button on the golf course side. So one, I'd like to again state my support for continuing to keep the golf course. I agree with Bob that during this pandemic, it's just been really nice to be able to use the course, and I would love to use it this winter for snowshoeing. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you. Looks like I have M. Majeski.
Yeah, hi, just Mike Majeski.
Hi, Mike.
Just wanted to echo Bob's comments and fully agree with what he said. And of course, agree with the value of the open space in both Site A and keeping it as a golf course at Site B. The one thing I wanted to mention with the poll was that I feel like that data is pretty skewed toward having to answer those questions, and there should have been a none of the above box because people have to select something. So if they weren't in agreement or wanted to see that site developed, they shouldn't have to be, you shouldn't have to choose an option like that. It should be a none of the above.
Duly noted, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? I see that there are some comments in the chat box.
Mary Beth has got her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mary Beth. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Thanks. Sorry, I forgot to take myself off mute. Thanks very much, first of all, for the opportunity to for your hosting this session and for the opportunity to chime in both via poll and verbally. I think I may be a bit in the minority compared to the other folks that have spoken. My husband and I currently live in Woodbury. We spent 17 years living in Battle Creek. We live in Woodbury now, which, as everyone knows, has a ton of available parks and trails, but we still find ourselves going to Battle Creek on a very regular basis. We were there most recently when we had the several days of freezing fog, and I actually saw the notification about this meeting a couple days after, being in that corner of Battle Creek with that kind of western looking fence post that overlooks what I believe is Site A. And I have to echo what the other folks said, that having the access to open space and natural space, especially in these times, is very important. That being said, I currently work at 3M, and I also understand the need for cities and counties to remain fiscally viable. So if there's a way to somehow, given the feedback y'all gather through this process, to try to meet both the need for outdoor space and, if the city and county's budgets are such that you have to do, quote, something, that will be revenue generating to find something that will hopefully allow those folks, both who live in Maplewood and who enjoy Maplewood's parks but don't live in the county, would be most appreciated. Because as everyone knows, the parks and open spaces that we have here in the Twin Cities are pretty unique in the country, and having a project like this where you're soliciting input and doing your best to try to take everyone's feedback into account is appreciated, and wishing that as this process continues, that there will be a solution that will work for the various interests that the folks here on the phone have expressed. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mary Beth, for those great comments.
My pleasure.
Let's see, Melissa.
Good afternoon, evening. My name is Melissa Wenzel. I live in Southeast St. Paul, and I don't envy any of you for having to make the decisions you're going to have to make in the future, because there are such polarized opinions and desires for both pieces of land. I would love to see something that allows for year-round multi-purpose use. And I would love to see something that not only protects nature, particularly in Site A, but also can meet the growing needs of the county, Ramsey County, and also the needs of climate change and climate resiliency. So I know that this pandemic has brought out a lot more people that have been homeless and having to struggle with insecurity for shelters, for sheltering. And I'd like to see a place where it's more accessible to more people. And I don't currently see the Site B doing that. I know that my comment will be disliked by many, but I just have to say that I'm speaking out on behalf of the community needs more so than the wants. How to incorporate that by keeping the golf course, I have no idea. Maybe there's a way to do that. But with a golf course that's not making money and it's already been slated to close because of that, I think we have a really good opportunity to try to meet the needs of our community. And even though I haven't lived on the east side for as long as many people do, I know that Woodbury has changed quite a bit over the years. And so I think it can continue to change in a way that meets a lot of the needs presented today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's see, Wayne. Are you there, Wayne? Looks like you're unmuted.
Did he speak today?
No.
Okay. I think that's why it's kind of
I wonder if he stepped away. We can leave the hand up and come back maybe.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
John, can you hear me?
Yes, I think, can you see me? I think you can. This is John. I'd like to speak.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have a question. I would like to know more specifically, what is the motivation toward this project? I see that it was recently called a redevelopment project. I don't know what that means or why we would need it. Certainly someone driving past the Ponds Golf Course, seeing a well-managed, well-maintained, very useful, very well-used property and environmentally well-made, wouldn't think to himself, well, this needs redevelopment. I mean, it's not as though it's full of decrepit and abandoned buildings. It strikes me, I mean, it sounds very much like the proverbial solution in looking for a problem. It sounds to me, from everything I've heard and read and seen, that apparently we're heading toward affordable housing, or meaning subsidized housing, because affordable housing generally means subsidized housing. If that's not true, I'd like to know it, but I'd like to know exactly what we're talking about. It's just so open and looking as though there's some desire to do something else with the ponds, not what it is already. It seems to me it would be useful to know exactly what that is. Maybe this whole project, in the name of openness and honesty, should be called a proposal to convert the ponds to subsidized housing. Then that can be discussed, and the pros and the cons of that. But it seems to me that that's what we're leading up to. Otherwise, it's just kind of a wide open exercise to, apparently someone thinks we should convert the ponds to something. We don't know what actually, but to something. It doesn't seem that they're very well focused, targeted sort of a discussion that would be useful if we had more. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, John. You know, I can try to answer as best as I can, my understanding, and if somebody from the county would like to jump in after my response, then please feel free to. So, you know, John, we we essentially, Perkins&Will has been hired to help facilitate a process to understand what the highest and best uses of these sites might be. As part of that process, we are actively going out and engaging with the community to, just understand what the community thinks the highest and best uses of these properties are. The decision around the golf course has already been made. That was a separate process, a process that was focused on budget. And so the decision to close the golf course has been made. And as I mentioned earlier, this planning process and what I have been charged to do as part of leading this planning process doesn't sort of revisit the conversations around the golf course being closed. And so through this process, we are just trying to understand, not only from a local perspective, so those that are directly adjacent to the golf course, but from a regional perspective, what people see as potential needs to achieve the goals, basically that the county has identified. So when the chair mentioned and walked through the county goals, those are sort of the overriding sort of aspirations for us to think about what the highest and best use on these sites might be. So to assume that affordable housing is what's going to be built here, I think is not correct, because we are not at a point where we have decided what potential land uses, if any, should be recommended here. And so we are still in the process of just eliciting input, trying to put out, what we think are the right types of questions. And I appreciate all the comments in the chat about maybe the survey needs to be updated. And so we will definitely look at that. But this is really about listening to what the community thinks are the biggest needs and what the potential is for these sites. Again, we are balancing that with what we're hearing from community groups that maybe take a more regional, county-wide perspective on needs. And then hence, that's where some of the questions around affordable housing or other types of land uses have started to get into this process. And so as we move forward, we're going to continue to do engagement. We're going to continue to listen to what the stakeholders think these sites should be. And the idea is that we're going to just generate ideas. These will not be the final ideas. I don't see this process as coming out of, at the end of this process with a concept plan, one concept plan that shows this is what it should be. Rather, I think it will be a series of ideas about the potential for what these sites could support. And then ultimately it's up to the county to, through a process, whether they're doing this as an RFP or something else, to figure out who might be the best end user for the site. And we're not closing the book on anything at this point. We're not closing the book on the golf course. We're not closing the book on not developing the sites, but we are just listening for what everybody thinks are opportunities for the site. So John, I hope that answers maybe parts of your question.
Well, thank you for your response. I appreciate that. I still don't understand what started the process. Why did somebody one day look at the ponds and say, we should do something else with it? Or ask the question even, what else should we do with it? When something is working properly, why would you say, well, we need to do something else with it?
Well, I think it goes back to the decision to close the golf course, and the county has decided to close the golf course. And so in closing the golf course, they now have 77 acres of land that they own that potentially could be used for something else. And so I think that has precipitated, what this planning process is about. The parcel A that we've identified as site A is an underutilized parcel. It's essentially a parcel that has sat vacant for a long time. Its previous use was farming. Now its current use is essentially just, fallow land. It's land that, besides sort of the natural resource and environmental aspects that it provides, it's land that could maybe potentially serve a better use in the community. And so that's what this process is looking at doing.
Hey, John, this is Vanessa. I just want to jump in and keep us on track for time here.
Yep.
I think that
Thank you.
there's, yeah, there's a couple more people
I see a
with their,
couple of
yeah.
hands. I see David, and then I know Wayne still, I guess, sort of has his hand up, and then S. Ramsey. So why don't we go to David first? Hi, David.
All right, came off
Able
mute.
to
Thanks,
unmute
thanks,
yourself?
John. Yeah, so that last few minutes of dialogue kind of answered my question, but I wanted to dovetail and echo John Horner's comment. You know, I attended the in-person forum, you know, last year, and also listened to the remote call that was held a month or more ago in November, I guess it was. And the vast majority of everybody who's on this call, I think, if you set the polls out properly, are going to say, hey, you know, why not keep it a golf course? And I've been hearing the questions asked several times over and again, you know, what problem are we trying to solve by taking a very nice golf course that most of the community and constituents of Ramsey County and South Maplewood enjoy, and you know, bulldozing it. So I think that's part of the reason why we get such high turnouts for these types of things. So that's ultimately the question I'm looking for, and I think you just answered it. My question that everybody's been asking is, you know, what problem are we trying to solve here? And it sounds like Ramsey County's mind is made up, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and you know, which is really unfortunate. But that I guess was my comment. Just a couple other points. You know, it's been around for 16 years. I keep hearing about the money that was spent, $5 million to build and everything else. That stuff's sunk. That money's been spent. The course is profitable, and revenues from the last couple of years are used to, I would imagine, help offset some of the other non-revenue generating activities for the county. So I guess that's my point. It's unfortunate that it doesn't sound like the voices will be heard here.
Thank you, David. Why don't we go to S. Ramsey, and then we can try going back to Wayne after this. So.
Okay, thank you, John. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm a Ramsey County resident. I live in the northern part of the county, but I'm representing tonight the Friends of the Parks and Trails of St. Paul and Ramsey County. And I would agree with Bob Bierscheid. We would like to see the county abide by the no net loss provision of the county charter, that we don't really care what use these two properties have, but that they should remain public open space, parkland, or recreational land. I'm also an interpretive naturalist, and I've been to both sites, and I can reiterate what John Zakelj said about the diversity of plants and wildlife on those sites, especially Site A has some of the most remarkable grassland habitat in Ramsey County, which holds several species of birds that we don't get to see very often, including bobolinks and clay-colored sparrows. So I wish everyone would take a broader view that these parklands and open spaces, they have intrinsic value. It doesn't have to bring in, you know, property tax dollars or provide jobs. These areas, once they're gone, will never, you know, there's nowhere else you can find 165 acres of open land in the county. There are smaller parcels, but one of the problems, we're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate, and that's because of fragmentation of these natural lands. So keeping the larger portions is going to make the community healthier by not only treating stormwater, having infiltration of stormwater, but providing habitat and reduce the effects of climate change, while also providing a beautiful space for people to recreate and kind of get that shot of nature that they need, which has been so important during these pandemic times, to be outside. And kind of nature is the one factor that's kind of been more normal throughout this whole pandemic period. So that's my thoughts. Just wanted to make those comments tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. We're looking forward to more participation. And if the county, to the county commissioners, if they do want, I totally understand the equity issue and providing low income housing and things like that. I just went on the Maplewood website and I identified 54 acres of property that is for sale that would be much more easily developed. There's no zoning issues. They're on transportation corridors and lines that are much better than South Maplewood. And so just within the city of Maplewood already, there's 54 acres that are easily found for sale that could be developed for those kinds of housing or development for business that are much better suited to that than these two particular pieces of property. And with that, I'll end my night. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. Any other comments? I think we have a couple of minutes here. So just so everybody knows, obviously we are recording this, so we will document the questions and the comments that were asked live, and then we'll also document any questions or comments that have been provided in the chat. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll just go through the last quick slide here. The project has a project page on the city website. Please follow that page to see sort of the ongoing. As I mentioned, we're going to have this survey. So the exercise that we did tonight, we'll have that as a survey that'll be available till September 10th. We will definitely internally have a conversation about some of the comments about changing some of the questions or the ability to not respond or none of the above. So that survey may not be up and available tomorrow, but maybe look for it on Friday. And then according to our overall project schedule, we're intending to, as I mentioned earlier, to organize another meeting likely in the beginning of March to sort of review and to look at any potential concepts that we have developed as part of sort of this ongoing project. With that, again, look to the website. Please feel free to reach out to myself or the city or the county project contacts to ask any additional questions. And thank you, for your time, and I appreciate all the comments that you're providing. And we will definitely document this and take these comments to heart as part of this process. So thank you very much. With that, I think we are done.